I did it with my hands again.
Yeah, we just
I
have
don't
to
know
be
if you can tell.
hands. As we said, at some point when Dave is busy being an actor, we might get him back, but tonight is not the night. So yeah, it's been a little while, but we went a bit different on this choice, so it's horror inspired more than horror.
Yeah, it is horror inspired. Yeah.
So we decided to watch Shirley, which both you and I had wanted to see.
Yeah, I really had wanted to see that movie.
But being a 2020 film, something kind of got in the way.
Yeah, but also, Karen, I hated this movie.
You hated it?
I didn't. Okay, maybe hate is too strong a word. I did not enjoy this movie because, like, okay, love a horror theme, love a biopic. This was nonsensical. It wasn't a real story. Like, I didn't get the point. I was like, we've taken a person who existed in real life and we've taken real parts of her personality and her story. And then we've just like made a bunch of shit up and then we've just like mixed it all together so you don't know what is real and what isn't real. And like, because then she is like, you know, this horror writer, then, you know, it's kind of like it's meant to be like life imitating art a little bit. So you get these, which I didn't hate that so much. I think the bit that it just bothered me was like, why make up this weird bit? And then I was like, it's a biopic or it's not a biopic. It's made up or it's not made up. Like, make up your fucking decision. And also, I think I just have like slightly have this issue that I thought I'd got over, but like Elizabeth Moss in her Scientology, every time I see her now, and I was like, you are part of an evil religion, and you like, we know that it's bad now and it exploits people horrifically at the lower levels, and I don't know how you can still buy into this. So it was, and also like I've also read I love Shirley Jackson, and I've read a bunch of Shirley Jackson, and I think there were too many things that were just like on the nose to me slightly, that I got to the point where I was like, granted, like when I started watching it, I hated it. Like, it got like 45 minutes in, I was like, this is fucked. And then I warmed to it. And then I started disliking it again. And I got to the point where I was like, when is this over? Like, what made up shit is going to happen until this movie ends and I can go away and do something else? So yeah, interesting. I was expecting to, I think the problem was, I thought it was like a darkish biopic about Shirley Jackson, which it isn't. Maybe that's the issue. Like, maybe I went in with a preconception that was incorrect, and this is on me, but I wanted to like it and I didn't like it. And
that's a lot of strong opinions.
I got a lot of feelings, apparently.
I don't think so. I didn't dislike it. I didn't love it. I probably liked it more than I disliked it, for different reasons. So I think as well, I went in at kind of fairly blank slate. So I haven't read Shirley Jackson, have been meaning to read Shirley Jackson work. Don't hate Elizabeth Moss as much as you do.
I didn't even realize, and I saw it. Yeah, apparently it's a thing in the back of my head.
It's one of those things too where I love her in The Handmaid's Tale, and I was a big fan of Mad Men, and I think she's a fantastic actress.
That's the problem.
I know, and I think maybe I kind of forgive that. But look, I probably would with you in the not liking it to start, because, so like you say, it's one of these interesting ones, and this isn't the first film I've seen like this where it seems like it's supposed to be a telling of someone's life, but actually there's so much thrown together that it's not really quite true to fact. So what was the one I watched last year? There was a Kate Winslet and Saoirse something or other.
Saoirse
Ammonite? Is it Ammonite?
Oh, I haven't seen that.
So again, completely different, but a similar thing of where there was enough about the historical person to have it be thought of as a biopic, but there was so much thrown in to make it creative and fictional that it does leave you going away from these kind of films where so I can understand why, family members might get upset with these kind of films where people might be going in thinking, I'm getting a fictionalized telling to some extent, a creative telling, but getting an idea of this person and their life before you go in. And of course, one of the key things we get is like, there's this big feeling in this film that it's just Shirley Jackson and her husband, Stanley Hyman, who are living on their own in this sort of big house where actually she had 4 children.
She had a bunch of kids. She didn't hate kids. She wasn't weird about kids.
Yeah. And so I think there were some interesting, I think the agoraphobia, I believe, was a thing. But even the fact, when you look her up, you know, this is set when she's in her late 40s, I guess. And they said, well, she died when she was 48. So they said this would have been preceding her death. But look, what I find interesting, so the film starts on a train with a young woman, Rose.
I watched it last week and I have no recollection of anyone's names.
I've got, of course, got the Wikipedia on. So I watched it on Monday. So I watched it a couple of days ago, but also have, as I was saying to you earlier, my brain's pinging at the moment. So,
well, I mean, we're not great, Karen. We can watch a movie yesterday and talk about it today and then be like, I can't remember their names or anything that happened. So like, you know, we're not the best at details sometimes.
So we've got, there's really 4 characters in this film. So there's Fred and Rose, who are the young couple that are moving to Bennington College because Fred's starting a new job as an academic there. And then we've got, of course, Shirley Jackson and her husband, Stanley Hyman. Yep. But really, for all the film is called Shirley, it's as much to some extent about Rose as Shirley. And actually, I think that's
Shirley Rose, then it would be one of those like, it's the exorcism of like name and flower.
And you know how badly wrong we can go with those.
Yeah.
So Rose is clearly, I think one of the frustrating things for me in the film, having not read Shirley Jackson, is that she's reading The Lottery, which is a short story which Shirley Jackson wrote that I gather is very popular. And
really, I have not, like, I feel like The Lottery is a very popular one. I have not read The Lottery. That's not one of the ones I've just randomly read bits and pieces over the years without like on purpose reading Shirley Jackson, and then watching that movie made me realize how much I should go back and actually get like the whole back catalog of Shirley Jackson and read everything. But yeah, sorry, on the train reading The Lottery.
Yeah, which made me, I mean, my frustration in the film is, because you know I get fixated in things, was all I wanted to know was what is the story in The Lottery? Like that's all, like, and I have to say I still want to know that, and it's been a couple of days and I don't know why I still don't know. So she's read this story, it's clearly making her a bit shuddery, but then also, you know, very flirty. So suddenly she and
but also like you say flirty, but there's a bit where someone's throwing rocks at something, and so then she's like, do you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna touch my husband's penis. I was like, what are your, like, what is, I don't know, I feel like that I actually quite enjoyed that first scene, only because I was like, that comes across as a little bit unhinged. Just like you're reading about like something terrible happening and all you want to do is get like real sexy with your husband. I was like, interesting triggers.
So yeah, so then they have a wee sexy moment on the train.
And you know what my thought there was? I was like, I wonder how clean train bathrooms used to be. Do people have more respect? Because the idea of, you know, when people like they join the Mile High Club or do it, I was like, do not touch any surface in like a train or a plane or like any bathroom.
You would not be doing that in the V line, let me tell you. You don't want to go in there.
So it's just like, so I was just like, I wonder how. And so I was looking at the surroundings. I was ignoring the sex that was happening. I was like, how dirty is that windowsill?
So yeah, so like the quick setup is she quite likes creepy horror stories. Yeah. They're young, very enthusiastic lovers. And then we find that they're heading to Bennington College, and when we get there, they're going to be staying with Stanley Hyman and Shirley Jackson. So Fred is going to be working with Stanley. But do you know, I'm going to tell you the things I did love as they go. But one of the things I quite like was this sort of masked folklore telling. So I think for all this is a fictionalized story of a horror writer. There's interesting horror elements throughout the telling, which I actually quite like. So things like they arrive at this party that the couple are having, and they're going to stay at their house, and it's people masked. It's almost, I mean, originally I thought it was like a Halloween-y type thing. Yeah. But it turns out later that Stanley teaches sort of folklore, mythical tales. So I don't know if this is like, I don't really know what it was, but essentially it was like almost like bonfires, masks, and it's the kind of thing you have seen in horror stories, horror films. And so it gave a really nice kind of setting to what could potentially be inspirations for a horror writer.
And the thing is, like, I think I did like that bit about the movie. Like I did, you know, the way that they'd done it. Yeah, all of those elements I enjoyed. I think it was like, I think, yeah, what it comes down to is like the story bothered me, maybe.
I mean, you'll go, I did not like Stanley or Fred. I don't think you can like Stanley or Fred.
No, I don't think you can. If you do, there's something a little bit wrong with you.
So Stanley is, you know, very showy, the life and soul, and
he's just like everything wrong with the university academic. Like he's
yeah.
Like I know like 106 of him, and I hate them all.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe that's it. Maybe there were triggers. And I think what I liked about the film, though, at the start is you get into this party and Shirley with her wry self it's quite cutting and quite entertaining, because there's that whole story, which is apparently a truer story, where Stanley Hyman, apparently on reading Shirley Jackson's work, decided, without having met her or anything, decided, I want to marry this woman.
Yeah.
So that story kind of comes up at the start, and I can't even remember the exact dialogue that's going on, but it's quite cutting, and Shirley comes off as a bit indifferent to people, and probably the kind of woman that you would find frustrating to be around, but highly entertaining.
Yeah, like quite entertaining. Yeah, I feel like sometimes she's very entertaining, sometimes she was just like mean to the point that I was like, I don't endorse this, and like what a horrible person. But like often when it was like a little bit more mellow, she was like very entertaining.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's the thing, she was entertaining there, and then there's this point where she's on her way up to her room, because the party had all been getting a bit too much for her, and Rose speaks to her as she's going up, and Rose is, you know, essentially mega fan, having just read the lottery, and is very excited clearly to be in this house, and yeah, Shirley's just a bit of a dick.
She's just a bit of an arsehole, isn't she?
And then points out her pregnancy that no one had told her about, that Rose was pregnant, and was like, well, we're not disclosing this just now.
Yeah.
And then it's just an arse. And that's when we kind of discover that Shirley is just taken to her room and is unwell, and the party has become too much for her. And essentially this is the sort of the start of this agoraphobic spell that she's going through. Stanley continues to be an arse, an all-out arse. So, you know, there's the Fred and Rose going to see him lecture. To be fair, he does seem like quite an entertaining lecturer. I'll give him that.
He was very charismatic, like he was very natural. So it's like they went to see him, and you can tell they're both like a bit in awe, like especially Fred. And then there's this whole like, hey, I'm gonna exploit you a little bit, and like we need a housekeeper, but I'm not gonna say that out loud. So like, wouldn't it be great if like the woman in this situation, who was meant to be attending this university and like auditing courses and whatever, maybe like if you could just like help around the house, like, you know, just like do some dishes, do some laundry. Like Shirley's not really coping. Like, it wasn't pot roast, but it was some kind of roast. It's like, what's your roast like? And
I know, it was like, I love eating hot foods in warm weather, and you're just like,
fuck off.
And he's quite handsy. And
he's real, that kind of way. If you just be cringing, is he just like
So she doesn't really want to be doing this, but you know, of course.
And Fred does the whole like, oh well, like we could just help out, like, you know, as in like, because he's not being fucking asked to do anything.
No. And
so he's told, like, oh well, you know, it's a great opportunity. Like, you love Shirley, whatever. Like, could go be like the housemaid.
Well, and they'll get their bed and board, but essentially she's doing a lot of labor, and also being told that she shouldn't really leave the house because he doesn't like Shirley being left on her own when she's going through these kind of spells. The other thing that is very hard to watch in this film is Stanley's controlling nature over Shirley and her writing. So Shirley has made it clear that, so she's starting to write something else. She's got this idea, and what she wants to write a story around is a student that's gone missing. And Stanley's very much like, that's not you. This isn't your writing. This isn't what you do. This has been done before, whatever. Yeah. So he's already sort of dictating what she should be writing about. It's made clear that he will read things as they go because he wants, creative input. She also makes a point of saying she wants to write a novel, and he says, no, you shouldn't do that. You're not well, whatever. Thankfully, in this, she goes ahead anyway. She decides she wants to write this novel, and she is going to focus on this idea. And I say, I guess the main premise around Shirley as a film is that through Rose being in our house, Shirley's getting more and more inspiration for this book. Now, like you say about this being a biopic, whatever, Fred and Rose's character is completely made up. Shirley and Stanley, some things are true to fact, I believe, but it's hard to know what, like, without really delving into it. But certainly he was her partner and he was a lecturer, but there's so much that don't know. So Rose, weirdly, even though like there's so much friction between her and Shirley is, as you say, Shirley is quite mean, because basically
there's like that first dinner where like Rose has like cleaned up the whole house, has made like something for dinner, and basically like Shirley is coaxed out of the bedroom to come down to dinner, and like there is a discussion where she's like, well, I'll come but I won't behave, and then she's just an asshole, like and I feel like I just sat there and I was just like, this is me, this is awful. I just felt so bad for Rose. Like I don't know, sometimes I feel the empathy too much.
I agree, and I think
like these are made up people, this is a made up situation, but I was like, she's being horrible, stop being horrible.
And I think too, Stanley was encouraging that, because he's like saying, oh, we've got these young people in our house, but like we can have fun with them. So he's supporting all of this.
I mean, maybe it's that whole like, that's like part of the ploy, to like to get her out of bed or to get her doing stuff. It's like, hey, if you like get out of bed, you get dressed, get out of the room, you can be an absolute jerk to these almost strangers. Like, come on, it will be fun. Like, come and interact with the real world, i.e. just like be horrible to these people.
And meanwhile, in the background, we've got a couple of things that happen around this time where, firstly, Rose, while she's still been kicking about on campus, encounters those young women that are kind of almost dancing around a tree in a, like, I don't know, like, again, seemed very unnecessary.
Yeah.
But again, had a very horror, arty
thing
to it.
Like very like pagan-y, witchcrafty, but like, I know what you mean. Yeah.
And I mean, again, knowing how much I hate Midsummer, which we've chatted about before, but not on this, I probably shouldn't like that kind of stuff. But I think it kind of fit with the vibe of the two stories we've got going on, where Stanley is, as we discover a bit later, a philanderer, and also, is teaching us mythology and whatnot. And we've got these sort of almost folklore type women that are being taught that, all these women are hanging off their every word. And then later on with this, who are these students? Who are these women that go missing, and what's their identity? So are we seeing women as these kind of mythical, floaty people that we're influencing, or who are they? And that's what I guess Shirley's trying to give a voice to. So like there are bits as it goes where Rose starts to get more, I guess, self-conscious as she gets more pregnant. She and like Fred are still having, well, she's trying to encourage more sex while they're still in the household, but then Fred stops being so interested and then is doing a lot of work with the Shakespeare Society.
Yeah.
We also discover that Stanley is having an affair, I think, with the dean's wife.
Yeah.
And Rose is still doing what she can, reading, but there's all like, so some of the characters interact where she meets the dean's wife, and the dean's wife is like, oh, if ever you actually want entertainment, because Shirley's got a reputation, essentially. Shirley's got a reputation, a bit of being a bit of a witch, also a bit of her, agoraphobia, not getting out of bed, also understandably, I guess, with some of the meanness portrayed in this as being quite mean. So it's hard to tell as well if the dean's wife is trying to do Rose a favor or not, or like I sometimes I find it hard to know the agenda.
I was gonna say she's been colored by like, yeah, like Stan or whatever, because it was like, you know, where she's just like, oh well, you know, I hear she's a bit difficult and like she doesn't do anything, she doesn't whatever. And you can tell like at that stage, like when they have that interaction, like Rose and Shirley's relationship has gotten stronger, and like Rose actually goes in to defend Shirley.
Yes.
And then that's when she goes like, well, I'm getting all my information from Stanley. So it's this kind of thing where it's like almost he has gone out and been like, my, you know, even though this, you know, I read this book or story or whatever one time, was like, that's the person I'm going to marry and she's like amazing, is like publicly just like talking shit about his like slightly sometimes unhinged wife. Like it's a weird, yeah, it's a weird dynamic, because yeah, but I think by that, because what is the, how do we get to the point where like Rose and Shirley are pals? Is it when Shirley first sends Rose to the doctor to steal the medical information?
He starts to get her to, so the house is super clean. Rose is doing everything she can, still trying to maintain a relationship with Fred, being pestered a bit by Stanley, sometimes being a bit too close and almost coupley with her when she's cooking. But most of the time she's in the house on her own with Shirley, and she realizes that Shirley's writing. They have a bit of like an altercation too, because Shirley is not, obviously doesn't want anyone to read her writing. That was all like uncalled for too. That was like extreme outbursts from Shirley. But then Shirley would like more information about the girl that's gone missing. And there's that speculation. I think there's one chat about, is there a chat about her being pregnant or something? And so part of the story is like maybe she's there with a dude. And I think this is where it kind of overlaps with like Rose starting to tell her what's going on with her too. But no, yeah, she goes to, while she's going to get a checkup, Rose steals medical records so that Shirley's of the girl that went missing, so Shirley's got information. There's also a really weird scene, and I don't know if it stuck out to you too, where like Rose goes to the postal service and then chats to that dude as if he picks up, like that kind of came from nowhere. Like
I didn't understand. No,
I wasn't sure what purpose that served other than to like confuse you, or
it was almost like the insinuation she had to go pick up their mail because like the posties like don't go out to like their house anymore because like Shirley is weird.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And then she asked him about the missing girl.
Yes.
And then it was like, are we accusing the post officer, the postie?
Well, it seemed that way. It's like how many, because maybe she found something out, but like maybe he picked up the girl, but it was kind of thrown in there in a way that I
wonder if there were cut scenes before or after. Like it feels like it just, like you're right, it was strange and it was a bit misplaced and it didn't seem to link to anything except for like, I guess like the endearing message is like Shirley is weird and people don't want to interact with her, maybe. And there was that extra bit about the
maybe there was a bit missing of where, because the idea is this young woman went missing without anything with her. So what happened? Is it like, did she kill herself, or was she killed? Was she abducted? I don't know. And so it was almost as if like, do you pick up young women and drop them off the middle? So I think it was something like, maybe if I remember rightly, where the end of the film is this sort of headland into the trailhead rather. I think maybe it was where she was seen or something. So maybe she had got a lift from the post dude or something. I don't know, but it wasn't clearly explained, and it just made me think, oh, is Rose detective now? Is this something she's been sent to do? Was she not just supposed to be picking up mail? I don't know.
And that was the thing, because that was after she'd stolen the medical record. So it's like, is she on like, she's going around and doing all this stuff around town? Is she doing Shirley's bidding? Because it's at that, I think it's that same trip out that then she's interacting with the dean's wife, who for some reason works in the library. I don't know. I mean, I enjoyed Rose and Shirley's friendship, as strange and unhealthy as it was or became.
Because like then Rose, there are points where Shirley's embracing the "don't you know I'm a witch" thing, and so she has, what was it under her bed? I don't know, some fertility.
Some
which Fred was not happy about. And then Fred's still working late hours. And then there's this whole other sort of side thing with Fred is desperate to actually get a chance to lecture and as part of Stanley's course, and for Stanley to read his thesis.
Yeah.
Which Stanley says he has, but of course hasn't. And then Shirley teases him about why he's not reading it. And it's like, yeah, I saw enough. It's fine. So there's more meanness on that side as it progresses, because basically Fred says it's mediocre, essentially. Sorry, not Fred. Stanley says that to Fred. Just a big bunch of upset. But by this point, so Rose has kept saying she wants to leave the house over and over again because she doesn't want to be doing all the cleaning. She doesn't want to be like looking after Shirley. Shirley's mean. Yeah. But clearly she and Shirley have bonded, which Fred has started to realize is, oh no, you're enjoying this sort of caring role. And then somewhere around that, there's the weird scene, again, going back to kind of horror-y type elements where Shirley isn't really going out very much, but she does go out into her yard at one point, or sort of the wooded area behind it, and picks mushrooms. And then has this very, very dark discussion, because she's clearly, I mean, maybe reflecting on being a horror writer, but also what happened to this girl, reflecting on what it is to be alive, what it is to choose to die, if this is what happened to the missing girl, if she chose to take her own life. So says to Rose that she's got a death cap mushroom and asks her to share it with her. And Rose is like, well, no. She's like, let's do it. It's fine. Give it a lick. No, that's not what it said. But like, you know, essentially give it a lick. Yeah. And then Shirley has a little munch on it. Rose is there.
I feel like before that she makes a joke and it's like, no, it's actually just like an oyster mushroom, but like Rose is like still really wigged out by the thing, and then she's already declared it's not actually poisonous anymore. Then when she eats half of it and then like puts it in her mouth in a real visceral way.
Yes, yeah, it's a bit of that going on. And then there's various sort of scenes of Shirley in the bath. Where she's visualizing Rose, but also visualizing Rose as her character. So throughout all of this missing girl and the story she's building around her on whether she had a lover, and whether she'd been pregnant, why she'd come to the university in the first place. This story was all being built with her visualizing Rose as this girl. As she learns more and more about Rose, that Rose and Fred had a shotgun wedding because Rose was pregnant, and that one of the reasons they'd come all the way to where they were was because Fred's family had disowned him for marrying her. So she was like defending it all, saying, and defending Fred, saying he's looking out for me. Meanwhile, Shirley knows fine well that what kind of shit goes down at the college. So Fred is likely not to be being quite as faithful to Rose as she might think. Because Shirley is very aware that Stanley has lovers, and she's
aware. I think that's a real thing, right? Like apparently that was a thing where he was just like, I don't know if it was like an agreement or whatever they called it, but it was like, he had many extramarital lovers, and that was just.
And she like, it's kind of made clear there, like that was kind of the deal, that she could be. It's a bit of a weird deal. She could be nuts and agoraphobic, and
he could go shag whoever he wanted, and now we have like a happy we'll meet in the middle sort of thing. Yeah.
But the idea is that she couldn't live without him because she really needs, I guess, the care, whereas he couldn't live without her because he just thinks she's a genius, and that creativity and that inspiration in his life. So it's a weird pairing. Both are weird pairings. But yeah, so throughout sort of writing this novel, getting immersed. So you get, as I say, again, more horror-y type things of floating about in woodland, and then you've got these scenes where she's in the bath and then visualizes as if Rose is there with her, which then leads into more of the slightly sexual elements between Rose and Shirley that start. And it didn't seem completely far-fetched, but I think this is where I kind of there were so many blurred lines in this film, because there were so many elements that were Shirley's mind, and Shirley, like, now she's in the bath and I'm here and I'm being looked after and whatnot. And then suddenly it's like she's playing footsie with Rose.
Real sexy footsie on the porch.
Yeah. So it's
crutch footsie.
So some of it, it's like, how much is in Shirley's mind? How much is this happening?
Yeah.
But their friendship gets a bit more touchy-feely, I guess.
Tactile, gets real tactile.
And then, you know, we then learn, because so Stanley doesn't realize that Shirley has been out of bed at all, does not know she's been writing loads, is getting quite angry with her, getting quite frustrated, but then learns, is this where he learns from the dean's wife that she is writing again, maybe through Rose or something, but he gets really annoyed.
I think it was Rose. And again, it was one of these things where I think, he was having a conversation with Rose being like...
And Rose defended her.
Yeah, and Rose defended her and was like, no, she's written pages. Like, there's like a manuscript on like her desk. And then it was this weird conversation about how do you know if it's like, how can you tell the difference between a manuscript and a pile of papers if you haven't read it? Because she'd said that she hadn't read it and it was all... But yeah, he basically got like a bit weirded out because he didn't know, and then it almost seemed like maybe slightly jealous because Rose did, and was obviously like that was a thing that Shirley was like sharing with Rose to the point that she knew, and like Stanley had no idea that she had written like half a fucking manuscript for a book or something.
Because that's the thing, essentially Stanley has engineered a situation where he's getting free help, but likes to be needed by Shirley, and this way has kind of pushed her to lean on someone else. So then there's the party they're invited to, and I guess faculty party, they're all going, and it was like, well, of course Shirley's not going to go, and she's like, yes I am. Oh, you can't, you're agoraphobia. So there's also that. I find this scene very painful, but a really nice touching scene between Rose and Shirley, where
they go get her a new skirt.
And she's trying to help her, and it's clearly such a big deal for her to leave the house and do anything, and she's just in tears, like she's just having such a meltdown in the changing room. And so that's when Rose goes in to help her and says, I thought you looked really good in this, and then that's the skirt that she ends up getting. Now, meanwhile, with Rose, there's a bit of like, is Rose getting a bit still frustrated, even though she's got a good friendship with Shirley, which I think she is, because, you know, there were scenes before that where like, is there not one where she's just breaking eggs on the floor or something? Like she's just...
It's just, she's like, I think that, is there a Shirley, I don't know if it's Shirley Stanley interaction, but like Rose is there and she's listening to a conversation that's happening, stand in the kitchen and just knocking eggs, just like rolling them off the table, and you're like, what? And then you're like, oh no, she's just knocking them off the table and they're all smashing on the floor, and then we cut to another scene.
Which I really like, because this thing comes back when they go to the dinner. So the dinner is incredibly painful and I hate every second of it, and I particularly hate Stanley at it. But I also hate, like, so Fred disappears. They go to this dinner. It's another one of these affairs where people are walking about in masks and whatnot. Speaking of the eggs being dropped, I did like the moment where Rose is just dropping sandwiches on the floor as well.
But then that was one of those things where I went, is Rose dropping sandwiches, or is Shirley watching Rose and Shirley is seeing Rose dropping sandwiches, but Rose isn't? But it's this thing where she's at, like, you know, they've got like the big table with a, you know, sort of help yourself buffet kind of like elaborate, you know, and she's just like, like Rose is just like dropping sandwiches off the table. But then I was like, is she? Because I don't know anymore, because first we watched Shirley and then we watched Rose through Shirley's eyes, and so now I don't know what Rose is actually doing and what Shirley is seeing Rose doing. Because I was like, why is... But then I guess that makes sense, because Rose did just like throw all those eggs off the table, so why wouldn't she drop sandwiches at like a big like soiree function?
And you know, I was like, I quite like that. I mean, those were bits I like, where it's like, I'm so frustrated in this situation with these men that are controlling everything, and these big lavish things where the men are getting all the attention from their young students or whatever, and I'm just pregnant and here, so I'm going to
eat this sandwich and I'm going to drop that one.
And it almost like, what I like about that too is that it kind of feels like Shirley influence in Rose, which shows how their relationship's going, because Shirley is badly behaved at times, including at that party. But there are moments where she's triggered because,
yeah, sorry, go on.
But yeah, like, so her rather than spending time with her, Stanley is flirting with the dean's wife, who we know he's shagging. The dean's coming over to try and touch Shirley. I felt like the dean was trying.
He gave it like a fair whack, right? Like
she was like,
nah. Yeah, she wasn't having it.
Then the dean's wife comes to talk to her. There's that chat about, oh, I like your skirt, and it's like, oh, you're painful. And then Rose tries to find Fred. He's disappeared somewhere, and I think that's again with a speculation that is Fred.
And then it's like, when she's looking for him, like encounters someone, and that person, I don't know, I presume we've seen this person before at some stage. She's like, what are you doing here? And she's like, oh, I'm looking for my husband. And it's like, oh yeah, we're all a big fan of your husband. It's like, yeah, there's like, I would say like clumsy suggestion that like he's doing bad things.
Yeah.
And then I think the best scene in this, well, not the best scene, but the best bit in this scene is when Shirley just pours red wine on the couch.
Yes. Oh my God, I love it. I love it.
Because like obviously the worst behavior. But yeah, not only that she does that and then she goes to rub it to make it worse. And the dean's wife obviously thinks she's like trying to help. And it's like, no, you don't rub it. You've got to like dab it off or whatever. And it's like, she's not trying to help you.
Yeah.
She did it on purpose.
And essentially there is a bit of friction, of course, finally between them, because essentially it's like, he'd be bored with you.
Yeah. That's right. It's like, yeah, okay, like he may sleep with you or whatever, but like he'd be bored with you. You're just like, yeah.
But it's also like through all this, I'm like, I mean, maybe I would struggle to live with Shirley too. I don't know anything enough about the dean's wife, but certainly Stanley. Why are we all like fighting over this man? Oh my God.
But you're right. Like it's like, what is it with these? There's nothing about that man that is like in the beginning he's charming, right? And I think you'd like 5 minutes with him, you'd be like, no.
Yeah.
Hard pass, and you've got the smart women, you got the pretty women, you got all the women. All the young ones as well.
There's moments too, like earlier on too, where like, he does finally let Fred give a lecture, and then he's all full of the, oh my God, it's amazing, get the drinks.
Even though he was like trying to destroy him previously, like.
But then there's like the big full-on kiss in the mouth of Rose, and then there's also
Rose didn't seem bothered by it. How it's like previously Rose had seemed to like recoil from all touch from him, and she just had like a bit of a giggle. Like that was her response to that one. I was like, that's the worst thing he's done to you so far. Yeah. And that's the one that doesn't bother you. I don't know.
Very confusing. And then at points he had like food in his beard, but it's I don't know, like it just I don't get it. But saying that, as we're both very aware, we have seen men like that in academia.
Yeah.
And yeah, like it's not beyond the realms of possibility that people would cling to this very chatty, outgoing, engaging, enthusiastic academic. So the party ultimately was a bit of a disaster, really. But yeah, like as I say, we have that point where again Fred had wanted to move out. That doesn't happen. The baby eventually happens. We do have a baby eventually. While Shirley's still trying to write. And I think that's when Stan and Shirley get a bit frustrated because suddenly their entertainment, their playthings, the children are going to bed early because they have their own baby to look after. And, meanwhile, Fred is still having his Shakespeare
club
society, whatever it is. So ultimately, Stanley decides, well, he's bored of them. He's getting more and more frustrated as well with Shirley because he's not having anyone to dinner with. And so it's a big thing to be eating on his own, and Shirley's just not even leaving her room anymore.
Yeah.
Not really.
She seems a bit pissed by this. I feel like, she doesn't have Rose's full attention anymore. And like I feel like there's a scene where like Shirley is trying to write and you can hear the baby crying and she's like a bit pissy about it. And it's like, yeah, she doesn't have Rose's full attention. Stan doesn't have Shirley's full attention. Yeah, so it's just like, look, we got to get rid of these people. They're not fun anymore to play with, as you said. Yeah.
And then that's where Rose gets upset because she actually, I guess she's not getting so much from Fred, but she wants to stay in the house. She wants to be around Shirley. They've got this friendship. So to try and get Shirley to want her to stay, that's when she pretends that this book that was part of Stanley's course had been taken out previously by the girl that then went missing. So I guess to try and imply that maybe this girl was one of the many people that Stanley has had a wee bit of passion with. But Shirley's just having none of it and goes, do you know, I do know who my husband's shagging. Do you know about yours? And that's when we find out that, or Rose finds out that the Shakespeare Society is not a thing. So through all of this, where we were anticipating this was likely to be the case, given a lot of the setup, she's been blindly going with, well, he's loyal to me, he's left his family for me, he's trying to look after me,
I'm staying through that, he's not that kind of a person, etc.
And he's already, he said that once I have the kid I can go back to my own studies, and so there's this, which I didn't see happening, but this was the plan. And so Rose, fuming, stomps out, goes to confront Fred, I believe, and then gets very, very upset, is heading down the road with the baby. And that's when Shirley, I guess kind of realizing what she's set in motion, goes to find Rose. And she says, like, get in the car, try and chat it through. Where are you going? What are you up to? And so that's when Rose asks to get taken to the trailhead, which Shirley takes her to. I was a bit like, this
seems a bit irresponsible, but she sure does take her there.
She takes her there, and then Rose is like, hold this, gives her baby to Shirley.
Hold this baby while I go precariously close to the edge.
Yeah. So of course Shirley, holding said baby, walks out as Rose is very near the edge, and we have, and I know you're saying you don't like this film. I like this bit about the film.
No, I liked this, but yeah, I feel like on average I did not like the film, but like I thought this bit was nicely done.
I thought this was really well done, because Shirley has made quite a few mistakes, but ultimately, and has come across quite badly at many points, but this is kind of, there's a little bit of redemption from her here.
It is her redemption, I think, yeah.
But there's also the reflection on, is this what happened to the young girl? Is Rose sort of reliving something here? And again, you're in this little dreamlike world where Rose may or may not have jumped, and we, obviously end up seeing that she doesn't. We get back to these cut scenes where she's moving out of Stanley and Shirley's house, but clearly raging with Fred and saying like things are not going to be normal again, things are not going back to normal, we're not doing, and actually putting a bit more of herself first, rather than saying, I'm just not going to look after the house while you go out and shag everyone. But as we say, we keep having these, throughout the film as well, there's sort of horror music elements that at times I kept thinking, I don't know if they should fit, but then I went with it too. But I think in this bit too, I still got confused a lot about like, oh, did she jump? Is she going to jump? Is this what could have been? Is this what actually happened? And I think, again, that's still where the Rose real life with the fictional story from the book that Shirley was writing does blur. But ultimately, Rose doesn't, from what I believe, from understanding it, Rose goes away with Fred. And then the end of the film, I think is a great ending too. I like how the film ends, because you're sitting with Shirley at the dinner table looking more and more angry, and I was like, oh, is he, like, so she's on her own now, but is he gone after is he in a huff with her, given this weird relationship they have, and gone out with the dean's wife or whatever? Like, it hadn't quite hit me for a little while that he's actually sitting in the background, but then you realize he's sitting in the back, and he's just not coming through for dinner. And it took me quite a while, I'll say, to realize that she's letting him read her novel.
Yeah.
And she's waiting for feedback. And clearly the tension in her face just looks like rage to me.
Yeah, like it, yeah. I can, yeah.
And then he comes in and just says it's genius, absolute genius. Of course, needs a bit of work and editing, but absolute genius. And then they end the film on their own, drinking and dancing.
Yeah.
And that was it.
And they all lived happily ever after for another 6 years. So.
Yeah. And as I say, I think I like enough elements, I think, where I like this film, but I can see your frustration. But also I just think it's quite an unsatisfactory ending for Rose. But saying that, maybe she was standing her ground, and obviously it's of a time as well. So, you know, this was it 1940s?
Ish. Yeah, that must be about right.
But yeah, I guess I'm surprised at myself kind of liking it, because, you know, I don't usually like a thing with no likable characters. But I think Shirley won me over. I think maybe it was the ending. Maybe the ending and Shirley and Rose was enough for me that it carried this film for me.
But I feel like Shirley did grow on me, like, because I said, as much as Elizabeth Moss bothers me, like, I think that yeah, like, because like I didn't hate it. I think for me, it's like I just didn't get the point. I'm still not sure what the point of, like, what was that movie telling me about Shirley Jackson or not Shirley Jackson, or like, yeah, I don't know. I think if it had been complete fiction, I wouldn't have had as much of a problem with it. But I guess I just got confused. I think I was just like watching it, and I was like, I'm confused as to what I'm watching right now. And then, as I said, like, I didn't. So yeah, it's the story. Like, I think there were lots of really effective bits. I actually thought that it was like nicely put together. Like, I thought that, like, again, and you said, like, there's like the kind of weird building horror music-y bits that kind of seem misplaced, but then they don't. Like, I thought there was lots of interesting stuff happening that I really appreciated. But I think just like the story annoyed me disproportionately. And again, this could just be like me, but that was enough. Like, I got to the point where I was like, all right, what is even happening? When does this finish? Like, what is this building to? And like, what happens? And to be honest, like, I didn't hate the ending. I felt bad for Rose. I liked the kind of Shirley bit of the ending. I think I just didn't get the point. I don't know.
Like, I think the other thing I quite like about it is just, you know, I mean, I probably struggle generally with biopic type films, because I guess
love a biopic. I'm like, it's like a documentary, but you put it in a movie for me. I'm like, I'm loving everything about it.
I wonder if, like, I prefer it in a documentary form. I don't know, like, I think what I like as well is that she is an anti-hero in this, and she doesn't change, and we still, like, so I think the portrayal of and perhaps incorrectly artistic license portrayal, but a portrayal of a woman writing in a genre that, I mean, there have been other fantastic women horror writers like Mary Shelley,
but just like heaps, yeah, for sure.
And even the fact that, as you and I've talked about before, like, it's the representation of women doing what women also do at a time when, you know, often we get men featured probably in biopic type stuff. So I think what I kind of like about it, and I don't know if this was what Shirley Jackson was like, which again is what you were questioning, but is that she was an anti-hero. She never really changed who she was throughout this film. And yet I still found, in that way where usually the way women are portrayed as she was at the start, that and actually, to be honest, throughout, that you would never, like, you can see men in academia being portrayed like that, and they're like, oh, it's just evil genius, kind of like passionate about their work, but that's actually showing a woman doing this and getting so engrossed, like, to the point of, like, you touch her work when she's not ready for you, so she's going to lash out. If you're in her space, she's going to lash out. If you're affecting her mental health or sanity, she's kind of lashing out. And yet coming out of that without disliking her immensely, I think that's quite impressive.
I mean, it is, yeah. As I said, like, she didn't become a nicer person throughout that movie, and yet, like, she did grow on me as a character. Like in the beginning, I was like, this person's horrible. But I think it's because I don't know if I don't think you need to necessarily show like a vulnerable side for people to like relate to you. But I think because as she went on, she didn't get nicer, but we did see like potentially like slightly different sides. Like that she wasn't just mean. Whereas I feel like in the beginning she was just mean all the time. But I don't know. But yeah, so I think I didn't mind. Yeah, like even like I thought the characters were well played. I thought it was like nicely put together. I don't know. I guess I didn't get the story.
No. And I think
that's my main issue. Like there's nothing like realistically, yes. I feel like hate is too strong a word now that I think about it. But I also like I didn't get around to seeing this one at the movies. I was like very keen to see it. So I was quite excited about seeing it. And then I think when I started watching, I was like, what is happening? And so there was then that disappointment sort of layered on top, which is not necessarily like the movie's fault. It's really me, Karen. I'm the problem here.
I think I also wonder. So I get it. So because I also wonder, have you read Hangs a Man that's loosely around? So the story is a novel that she wrote about this college freshman, and yeah, I'm curious. It's made me want to go and read. I want to go and read The Lottery, and I also want to go and read some of her stuff. So if nothing else, maybe that was a nice.
Which I like because it's like I haven't read The Lottery. I did read Hangsman like 1,000 years ago to the point that I remember nothing about it in a bad way. The one I've read the most and most recently would just be like now what's it called in real life? The Haunting of Hill House.
Yes, I think that's what's I
always get confused because you know how like then they movies they call it like The House on Haunted Hill. That was one of them. No, Haunting of Hill House was it's a great book. Granted, like that's right, because The House on Haunted Hill and Haunting of Hill. So you got the original Haunting movie out of it in like the 50s, 60s. Great. I feel like that is the earliest movie where I would say there's a genuine jump scare. I think it's sensational. You got the remake with like Catherine Zeta-Jones and like people in it, and then the House on Haunted Hill is the one where they do like Jeffrey Rush psych house ward thing. Anyway, Haunting of Hill's House, like great book, great story, and then I think like because like and then every time they've put it on the big screen or on the small screen, I think they've done like a pretty like reasonable job. So I feel like that's the story I know the most, and it's probably I feel like it's the first one I read of Shirley Jackson's, and then probably, as I said, the most recent and the most frequent. And I just think it's like, it's a good book. But I feel like now I need to go and like read all the other ones that I don't remember, or like the majority, which I just haven't read at all, as I said. Yeah, because like I'm sure I've read Hangs Man, but like a very long time ago, but I haven't read like The Lottery or anything. But yeah, if that was the point, then I say fucking more power to you.
Exactly.
Like, Shirley Jackson, great writer.
Yeah. Good work.
Yeah.
Good work being a bit creepy. All right, so what are we doing next? I think it's me. I think
it's you, right? Because I think I picked Shirley off the list.
Okay, I'm going to try and do this just quite quickly. What do I want? Oh, do you know, I know it's silly and it probably like I've never seen Poltergeist. It's the top of my list. I believe it's on Stan. Can we watch Poltergeist?
Yeah, again, I've seen it, but like a long time ago. Happy to rewatch.
Okay. Sure. I think it was making me think of you because of your Poltergeist versus ghosts and what can move objects and what can't.
I'm just like very specific about ghost physics. Karen is next physicist. Let's get the physics right about the ghost physics.
So I almost watched it last night while I was still doing a bit of late work and I needed something on the background. I'm like, I can't put something on I've not seen. So that's why I ended up watching Scream while I was doing work. So yeah, Scream worked fine. Poltergeist would not, but it made me want to watch it. So cool. We'll do that for next time. Thanks, Sophie.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.